So, hi everyone, I'm Taj. I am, very excited to be here. Thank y'all for joining us today. In terms of memoirs specifically, I'm looking for, things that really share relatable voices, things that are coming from places of connection, and also just really unique ways of sharing something new. I think that the hardest part is, everybody has a story to tell. And so trying to make sure that it's something that is what publishers will see as marketable in the industry. That's the hard part. And so I'm glad to be here today to talk to you all about that.
Perfect.
Okay. So we're really just talking about nonfiction proposals today. A lot of times I will open my inbox and receive a memoir query, but it doesn't necessarily mention anything about a proposal or include one. And so let's just talk really briefly about what a book proposal is specifically and why they're required for nonfiction projects. And this is specifically, obviously, in traditional publishing. Proposals can help us demonstrate an author's subject matter expertise, a book's potential marketability, and a vision for a project so that as we're thinking about the marketability of something, how will we be able to position it? Who is it intended for? In what ways can we, really creatively pitch this so that editors really want to pick it up and get through those pages? Oftentimes, nonfiction works can be sold with a proposal and just a few completed sample chapters. So unlike fiction, right, the full manuscript doesn't necessarily have to be complete. A lot of times I will receive a full manuscript for a memoir, but there won't be anything in terms of a proposal. And that's the part that I actually really need. And so if a memoir is fully written, I don't need a proposal. Not true. So as we are looking at this thing, each literary agent, is going to approach this differently in terms of how they manage their inbox and what they initially require for a query. Some are going to just want sample pages up front. Some are going to say proposal only up front. Some may say, I just want the initial overview and I'll let you know if I want pages or a proposal. And so you want to make sure that whatever it is they're asking for, that's what you give them. I do have a lot of times where I receive something I didn't ask for, but I don't get any of the things that I did. And in those instances, it to me, it's just an incomplete query. And so I'm going to move on to the next. And so it's highly possible that it'll just be passed upon if it's not what was requested. And so because a proposal is ultimately going to be necessary, and because some will require it up front, it's best to begin the process of compiling your research and project plan as you're putting together your story. And why? Well, in today's market, memoirs can be a tough sell. I don't want to scare you, but I do want to be honest with you, right? And so if we think about this, of the 8 billion people on Earth, everyone has a story. Everyone has something that they could share. And so what we're trying to do in the traditional market is create buy-in. So we want strong proposals that help equip agents for pitching to those editors who then have to pitch in those acquisition meetings. And sometimes those meetings will include the sales team, the marketing team. They may include the actual publisher over the imprint and others who may have to all agree before something can move forward. And that may actually take multiple meetings to get to that yes. And so, in trying to make that strong proposal, basically, you're giving folks what they need to really advocate on behalf of the story. And so, as long as that proposal gives that clear vision with easily identifiable audiences, it gives them a sense of how to try to quantify their sales projections. That makes their job a little bit easier and it gets them closer to a yes, even though, obviously yeses are not guaranteed. And so, what should a proposal include? Typical components may be an overview of the project itself, information about you, your bio, comparable titles. Think about, what other things are recent on the market, recent within 2, 3 years, maybe, ideally. But also not just which ones are similar, but how is yours different? in what ways can you differentiate so that they see that there's a fresh voice there? In terms of a marketing and publicity plan, those contacts that you may have, if you have written a bunch of op-eds, if you have a podcast, what does that following look like? In terms of social media and platform, what have you built thus far? If you have this really incredible Substack and this amazing following or this giant Patreon or whatever the case may be, making sure that you're sharing those things and giving a sense of what kinds of touches you have with these different communities, these different audiences that you've identified. And then in addition to those things, you're going to have a detailed chapter outline. So we have a sense of the structure of what you have coming, assuming that this is not complete. And then you're going to have sample pages, 3 to 5 complete chapters that give editors, agents a sense of your voice, that give them a sense of how this information is going to be delivered and in what ways they can anticipate the rest of those summaries coming together. And so another myth, I can self-select which components to submit for that query. I think we already addressed this, but that is false. And so, as you're thinking about those submission requirements, agents tell you upfront what they want to receive in their inboxes when it comes to the projects that they're looking to consider. Any incomplete submission is something that may not be considered at all. It may be immediately sent back. It may be something that just, kind of falls through the cracks, depending on whether that agent is someone that responds to every query or not. It may just go unanswered. And so just like agents are looking for revised and polished manuscripts on the fiction side, they're looking for revised and polished materials on the nonfiction side too. And so in what ways can we make sure that that proposal is really, really strong? I mean, the Manuscript Academy is a great place to try to find their answers to those questions. And that is it for me. So thank you guys for listening. Let me get out of just sharing my screen.
Thank you so much. Okay, we have a question from the chat. How long is the detailed chapter outline for each chapter? 300 words, 1,000 words?
You don't necessarily need that many just to describe your chapter itself. I've seen ones where it's a strong paragraph. I think 300 words is probably more than you need, but I have seen some that go to that level of detail. It just depends because sometimes people will have a unique formatting system for their particular memoir. So I would say use your best judgment, but you want them to get the gist of what's going to be covered and maybe how.
Okay, and just a few more questions while we are on the topic of how to pitch, how to write your pitch, how to do this proposal for the book description, project overview in the query letter. I've heard that different agents prefer having a synopsis versus a half synopsis versus jacket cover description. Which do you prefer in the query letter, and how do I know what an agent actually prefers?
That's a great question. I think it's really hard to know what every single person's going to prefer. Look at their submission requirements. Hopefully, it gives you a sense of what it is they're specifically looking for. For me, I think in terms of what you're including in the query letter itself, it can be something like jacket copy, where you're kind of giving an overview that kind of gets to the premise of the story, as well as including some of those details in terms of what the intention of it is. And then obviously the proposal will get into the nuts and bolts of everything. But I definitely think that's subjective, and Stephanie and Catherine may have very different feelings about that than I do.
I really align with you. I prefer something that feels a little bit more like a traditional book jacket query kind of style. But if you're breaking the if a submission asks for 3 paragraphs, I'm not going to be upset if you've given me a couple extra bullet points of some of the specifics of what you're diving into. But yeah, I like the idea of like getting a sense of how you're pitching it helps me understand how you want a reader to receive the work as well.
Mhm. You're muted, Catherine.
I did it.
There
Oh,
you go.
sorry, I'm a total Luddite. I can't barely work a computer. But I know it works when it works. I love to make the joke. It's like the Supreme Court definition of pornography. You know it when you see it. It's that. It's not a formatting thing for many of us. I'm not particularly numeric. I mean, it works strictly on voice and story. Is there some compelling element that's jumping out? And it does happen fast. 1 paragraph, 2 paragraphs will do do the job. Is this an interesting perch? Is this something very fresh? Would people respond to it? So it's not really because it's closer to book jacket copy than not. Any kind of pitch or querying works on the same principle. Is there something, that pops, something that grabs you, that hooks you? The other joke I make everywhere is you have to be a happy hooker. The hook is very clear when there is one, when it's publishable.
Thank you. And I know it's so frustrating that it seems like every agent wants something slightly different. I know that is like so much pressure to put all in all of you. I'm so sorry that's how it is right now. I will say I don't think anyone's going to reject you for getting something slightly wrong in terms of format if they like your story and they like your writing. So please don't worry too much. Do your best. But I just can't imagine someone being like, well, I love the writing, but they told me too much about what's going to happen in the book. So no.
Right.
I don't think that will happen. Okay, and then just one more question while we are on format, then we'll move right along. For memoir, does a synopsis substitute for a chapter outline? Or can an author substitute a synopsis for a chapter outline?
I think it depends, and I think that's going to come down to preference for the agents. I find that a chapter outline tends to tell me chapter by chapter what's going to happen, whereas a synopsis might give me an overview, but it's not going to necessarily show me the organization part. And I tend to like that specifically when it comes to nonfiction.
Wonderful. Taj, thank you so much for this beautiful overview and class. Very educational. We love this. We love education here.
I appreciate it.
Next, thank you.